you want to move over, or they're going to bone your shot.
Oh. You're talking about when I go all the way around?
I was going to give you one time, and again, I'll make sure to. Yes, I'll bring you. And I think you can do that because I want to Parkersburg, okay. Okay. I will do that and make sure you're classified. I'll go right back to the card. Alright. You guys all good with the setup here? Alright, I'll be around taking photos, so holler if you need anything from me.
That's the mic on the stage. That's the mic on the stage. I don't hear anything on the stage. Okay. Be ready to switch to it.
My gut says not on.
Oh, it is.
From
And break
the
that
walk that
in.
you did, I don't think I'll make it to you.
He's
But
looking.
if you would have it like on the wedge or closer like that, I would say that would be the best. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
All right, good. Sounds like it's on. Well, we're going to start. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll start with that. I pledge allegiance. Well, thank you all for being here today. As you can see, Pat Grassley, I represent Butler County, western half of Bremer County. As you can see, I'm in farmer mode. I told Senator Ernst I'll probably have to sneak out a little bit. We're working in the field. But Joni, welcome. I hope you don't mind me calling you Joni. So anyone that you've ever had the opportunity to serve with you, I feel like we go by first names. But Joni, thank you for being here in Butler County, and thank you for all your years of service. It's great to be here. And one thing that we're really proud of when we have meetings, you know, this is kind of the founding territory of town meetings with Senator Grassley going back into the 60s. One of the things that we really appreciate is our elected officials coming here, willing to take tough questions. And that doesn't mean we have to agree on every single issue. But the expectation in Butler County is that we have a good civil dialogue. I have an expectation that you'll get that here today. We appreciate you being here for all the hard things that you're doing for us and all the years of service you've had even before you were elected. So they didn't come here to hear me. I'm sure they want to hear from you. Well, some of them might want to hear from me, but I'm not going to, I won't bore them to death with that. But again, thank you all for being here, and hope we're going to have a great meeting, giving senators the opportunity to answer our questions as this part of representative government that we feel is so important. So thanks, Joni. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. You've got some great folks representing you in our Iowa legislature. So it is good to be with you today. Thanks for coming out before you start your work day and having a conversation with me, and I look forward to that. And we're out crossing the state. I go river to river, hitting our counties. I've done a number of farmer roundtables. I had a law enforcement roundtable earlier this week, doing a number of Small Business of the Week awards. I do chair the Senate Small Business Committee, which is such a privilege and honor for me. So I get to recognize a lot of our entrepreneurs and businessmen out across the state. So I am going to go ahead and open up for questions. It looks like we have a lot of folks that would like to ask questions. Justin will go ahead and get you queued up. He'll call your name. And then we have, let's see, we've got John and Dustin that have microphones. So they'll come over to you. They can hold the microphone for you as you read your comment or ask your question. But again, thanks for coming out today. I really do appreciate hearing from you. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Senator. The first three will be Neil Scarridge, Karen Franchik, and Alan Ostrich. So Neil first.
Okay, Neil.
Good morning, and thank you for coming to Parkersburg, Iowa. I'm the American Legion Commander here in Parkersburg, and we have one request for you. We'd like you to be our Memorial Day speaker next year.
Well, thank you. I'll get that to Josie, my scheduler. Yeah, do you have any thoughts or questions beyond that then, Neil?
Iowa is the second leading state with the second leading cause of cancer, and there's a lot of chemicals that are being used throughout the world on our food products as well as on our crops. What is being done to curb the use of chemicals, yet allow us to produce all of the products that we do and give us good food on our tables?
I think, and thank you, that's a great question. So we do invest a lot in research and technology, and I believe in that, and that's part of our farm bill, making sure that we're able to invest in that type of research so that our farmers have access to tools that are not harmful to us as human beings. So continuing to invest in that will be a huge push for us in the Farm Bill and making sure that we are moving in that direction. There is also a lot of interest in organic farming as well, which is always great. And so if we can find ways to scale organic farming and make it easier for those organic farmers to produce, that's also a good direction to go. So we want to have as many tools as we can in the toolbox and make sure it's good for the environment as well as our farmers and those that are consuming what we're producing here in Iowa and across the farm spectrum. So thank you, and thank you for your service. I appreciate you.
Next up.
Okay, next we've got Karen.
Karen.
Thank you. I am a retired healthcare provider that has spent my career in community health and VA healthcare. So the health of Iowa is of utmost importance to me. Iowa already suffers a shortage of healthcare providers, and as mentioned, has the second highest rate of new cancer diagnosis. President Trump's big beautiful bill will cut billions from Medicaid, which is the main source of revenue for rural hospitals and community health centers that serve the most vulnerable Iowans. If you vote for this bill, what will you do to ensure that all Iowans can not only continue to receive care, but have access to resources that make them healthier?
So yes, there is, and thank you for being a healthcare provider. We appreciate that. We need more healthcare providers in the state of Iowa. So I am a big supporter of our community health centers. I think that's incredibly important to make sure we're delivering those services in the rural area. You are absolutely correct in that we do have a large number of those patients that are there because they are served by Medicaid. We know that that is a very important program, which is why we will continue those discussions. We know the House has their provisions for Medicaid, and I actually agree with most of their provisions. Everyone says that Medicaid is being cut. People are going to see their benefits cut. That's not true. That, go ahead. Well, see, and that's, if you read the bill, what's being required are things that are typically done here in Iowa anyway. What happened during the last several years, and this happened during COVID, and I can understand some of the reasons they did this in the Biden administration. They made it much easier to get onto Medicaid, but much tougher to take people off of Medicaid. So even though they may be working a full-time job and have access to other benefits, they're still receiving Medicaid. So and that is correct. So what we have to do is make sure that those that are not eligible by the federal standard for Medicaid are not receiving Medicaid. What we do need to do is make sure that those that are part of a vulnerable population have access to Medicaid and receive those full benefits. So what we're trying to do is strengthen Medicaid by directing the dollars to the people that actually meet the requirements of the program. Now, we know that there are billions of dollars that are overpaid in Medicaid every single year. If we can take those dollars and redirect them to those that need those, then we will do much better. We will do much better. Thank you.
Next up is Alan from Parkersburg. They'll be followed by T. Junker from New Hartford, or Ted.
With the expansion of the drone and missiles attacks limits by the EU in Ukraine, do you see Moscow becoming a target now for the Ukrainians? And how do you see that conflict coming to an end? Will it be a Korean-type armistice and DMZ and that sort of thing?
Yes, and this is a tough one, and I am fully supportive of Ukraine. And so we've got a situation there where the EU has said, take more of our platforms and use them as you will. I do get concerned that this will escalate the war. Obviously, if Ukraine decides to use drones and missiles to target Moscow, there will be other thoughts by Moscow. Putin is threatening nuclear and so forth. We have to be really careful about that. But at the same time, I don't know of any war that's been won on defense. So what do? I say let Ukraine do what they need to do to bring the war to an end. This has gone on way too long. I am a co-sponsor of the bill that's being put up by Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat, and Lindsey Graham, a Republican. We have over 80 co-sponsors on this bill in the Senate to bring up greater sanctions and secondary sanctions against Russia, which would squeeze them so that they don't have the funds to continue funneling money into their war machine. So I am all about sanctions. I want to see this war end, but I want to see it end also with a favorable outcome for Ukraine. We're losing about 5,000 civilians and soldiers in Ukraine every week because of this war, and it has to end. So if there's a DMZ, something like that, whatever it is, the war needs to come to an end.
Do you think Trump will veto that bill for Putin? Yeah.
Ted Junker.
Good morning. Thanks for coming here again. And I fully support your efforts to cut all this wasteful spending and all that stuff that needs to be cut. With that being said, I'm concerned about your support for this carbon capture pipeline and the billions of dollars that's going to be wasted on that for no good reason. It just doesn't make any sense to build a pipeline that serves no purpose.
So I know this is large part a state issue. I have been supportive of conservation efforts and tax credits at the federal level. So that's where I stand with that. I have not taken a position on the pipeline here because I have always said that that is a state and local decision. And what I would hope would happen is that anytime the projects are proposed, is that those that are working on these projects are working very closely with the landowners to meet their needs and expectations. So I know that the Iowa legislature has taken up the issue, and it's now at the governor's desk, and in conversations that I have with the Iowa legislature and with the governor's office is that they are hearing from both sides of the issue, and that's really important that they do that. And then the governor will be making a decision on that. Whatever her decision is, I'll stand by that, again, as a state and local decision. So I do understand, I do support those tax credits at the federal level. I do believe in conservation, so we'll go there. But again, I haven't publicly stated a position one way or another on the pipeline.
Next up will be Nathan Holstein, followed by Tom Stewart.
Yep, right here.
Thank you, Senator, for making it here. I know it's probably a pretty hostile crowd, it seems like so far. I want to appreciate, thank you for everything you've done for farmers and biofuel industry. As part of the reconciliation bill, I know the Trump administration has made critical infrastructure a big part of their American energy dominance. Obviously, that has effect on farmers with ability to get propane, natural gas, also for the biofuel industry. One of the aspects I think was pulled out from the reconciliation bill dealing with FERC. I know President Trump tweeted saying that that should be back in there so we can get the vital critical infrastructure that we need across the U.S. And so just more of a comment. I just hope that the Senate can support that, and so we can get some of those projects done so we can grow rural Iowa and expand economic development.
Yeah, I think it will continue to be a really, really heavy topic of conversation, and the president has been very supportive of these infrastructure moves, not just in Iowa, but all across the United States as well. So again, going back to the fact that we really do need to work closely with the landowners, but recognizing that we do have to continue to move forward. Energy is a big deal, and if we really want to be self-sufficient and find a way forward, we've got to find ways to encourage greater development of energy here in the United States. So this is, I know it's a testy topic, folks, and believe me, I've followed what's going on here in our state, in other states as well. We've got to figure it out. We've got to come together on this and make sure that we're finding reasonable accommodations to develop energy here in the United States rather than being reliant upon foreign adversaries. So we'll find a way. We will continue those discussions. I know it's really important to President Trump.
And next up, Tom Stewart.
Good morning. There's plenty of things I could ask a question about, but what's become more important to me in the past couple of years with my mom being in the nursing home is the costs. My folks, some people here know them or knew them, and my grandparents were poor people on both sides of the family that always worked, always saved. We didn't go on vacation. We got one pair of shoes, and we had shoes for church. Limited amounts of clothes and whatever. We went on vacation 2 times when I was in high school, both to, one was Lake of the Ozarks because you could rent a trailer there through the military. My dad was retired Army. Anyhow, all the work and sacrifices my folks made now goes to a nursing home. My mom has dementia. You're paying for someone to not have a life, and I just think that it's absurd that other people, and nothing against them, but I have friends that never saved anything. They get the same care that my mom gets, And $10,000 is a lot of money. And you know, she gets my dad's Social Security and part of his disability. He had Agent Orange cancer and part of his Army pension. But that doesn't cover anything hardly, you know, out of that. So the lack of help, the care she got here in town was ridiculous. It's a lot better in Eldora. It's a lot more expensive. And I don't know if people are aware of that, you know, how much things cost. You know, if there's any help anywhere on the horizon, I don't think so.
Yes, I think a lot of people here are probably painfully aware of how expensive it is for nursing home care, especially for a loved one that has dementia. And I know what you're talking about. My grandfather, when he had to go into the nursing home, and this was, you know, probably 20 years ago, so costs were not quite as much then, but it was $5,000 a month. And he wanted to kill himself because he couldn't stand the thought of trying to find a way to pay for that and taking farmland to do it, to pay for, you know, to pay for his cost of care. But anyway, we do recognize that. And you mentioned, you know, your father had served in the service. And is that helping care for your mother, if I could ask? That
what she gets
any benefits?
Of his pension and disability is, okay, you know, about 30%.
Okay.
Of it. So it's just the fact that you save that generation, they save their money their whole lives, and then they outlive. Or she's alive, but she's not alive, and she would feel the same way. You know, why are you wasting this money? I know, nobody knows my folks better.
And yeah, and they would probably say that, but I would say, you know, obviously not a waste of life, and there's dignity in every life, even when someone is maybe not completely in today with their memories, but certainly the cost of that care has skyrocketed. And when we look at provider costs, it's through the roof. When we look at the cost of regulation, especially when it comes to nursing homes, it's through the roof. And this is where we have to have those subject matter experts that are able to tackle this and figure out what is the best system where we can provide quality care, but at a cost that is reasonable for those that do have to put their folks into a nursing home or care facility. So thanks for sharing that today. And if we could help follow up to see if there are any other programs that might benefit your mother, we'd be happy to do that. And that's a good segue for me to plug our services at our offices too. I far too often have people that are not fully recognizing the veterans benefits that they have earned and deserved. And so whether it's veterans benefits, Social Security, IRS, whatever, if you're dealing with a federal agency and you need help, don't bang your head against a wall trying to break through these agencies. Let my team and I know how we can be helpful. I may not always be able to get you the answer that you want, but I will certainly do my best to make sure that these agencies are being responsive to you and making sure you get the benefits you've earned and deserved. So, sir, if we can follow up with you, I'd be happy to do that.
We'll go ahead and get some questions from the bottom here. Next we got Jen Cooley, followed by Randall Hollow.
Hi, Joni. Somebody else already touched on this, but this bill that you're talking about in the Senate right now, it does in fact cut Medicaid, and 40% of Iowa's children are on Medicaid. 50% of Iowa's nursing home patients are on Medicaid. 77% of the people on Medicaid, you're right, they do work, but you know what they don't get? A living wage. And that is why they are on Medicaid, and that is why they are on Medicaid. And the fact that you want to take that money and route it two people who make billions of dollars, who have more money than anybody in this room together.
Well, I would say, Jen, that no, we're not going to cut those benefits for those children. So, no, what we are doing is making sure that those that are not Medicaid eligible are not receiving benefits.
Next up is Randall Harlow.
Randall.
Thank you. My question pertains to the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. And as I'm sure you're aware, but apparently many of the representatives were not aware at the time, nestled within the 1,000 pages of this bill was a small clause which, for the first time in our nation's history, in fact, effectively prohibits the federal courts from enforcing contempt orders. And this is a provision which lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have stated would represent a catastrophic unraveling of the checks and balances and balance of powers that our nation's founders have enshrined in our Constitution. And if you look around the room, we have Iowans, or Democrats, Republicans, and represent a different variety of views on the slashing of benefits and ballooning debt in this bill. But one thing I dare say that everyone in this room probably agrees on is the sanctity of our Constitution. So now my question for you today is, will you pledge to us, our constituents who you serve, that you will not vote for this bill or any other bill that contains this poisonous provision?
One thing that I will explain, because we have a lot of subject matter experts here in the room, is that the House has written one version of a bill. The Senate is taking up our own version of the bill. The two will be married together at some point, and we hope that that is by July 4th, and we can get that behind us, work on the Farm Bill and other appropriations bills. But for those of you that do follow the Senate and the process that we go through, is that there is a rule called the Byrd Rule. Silence. So the Byrd Rule states that anything that goes into our package in the Senate, it can't be policy. It can't be policy. It has to be focused on mandatory spending. I don't know anything about that provision that talks about mandatory spending or revenues. Okay, so a lot of what has been wrapped up into the House bill will be flushed out in what we call the Byrd bath in the Senate. We go through this every time we go through spending packages in the Senate. So we'll go through the Byrd bath, and we're not the ones that make that decision, folks. Again, if you follow Senate procedures, it's nonpartisan parliamentarians that make that decision. They are not appointed by us, nonpartisan parliamentarians, and they are very strict about this as well. So I don't see any argument that could ever be made that this affects mandatory spending or revenues. I just don't see that. I don't see it getting into the Senate bill.
Next up is Harrison Cass. Next up is Harrison Cass, followed by John Kaiser.
I did. It will not be in the Senate bill. And I could support the Senate bill, and I may not. I don't know what's in the Senate bill yet.
Will you vote for it if it's in there? It somehow makes its way in there. That was the question I heard.
Okay. Next question.
Senator.
Howard.
My name is Harrison Cass. I'm a former naval line officer. I'm a retired school superintendent living in Waterloo, Iowa. Thank you for coming here today to speak with us. This is what democracy should be about, is direct face-to-face contact with your constituents, and we appreciate that. These are troubling times in the United States of America. Many Americans, including me, have great concerns about the direction that our president is taking and our federal government is taking right now. We clearly have, and this is already in place, we clearly have a president who is destroying the federal government. To serve his own purposes. And I could go into hundreds of things, but I don't have time to do that today. But let's just say the main thing that disturbs me is this, and it affects all the other things we've talked about so far. The destruction of the checks and balances that the president has already put in place. He's fired inspector generals. He's fired the leaders, any leader of the federal government that disagrees with him on any political notion. He is fired, and he's even pursuing lawsuits against those who lawfully acted and challenged him in the past when he was trying to overthrow the government. Now he has taken over the government. And he's been very clear about it. He's been good about it. In 4 months, he's made it into a dictatorship. And the worst thing that I think he's done is this. Obviously, the changes. I used to teach political science and history when I first became a teacher after leaving the U.S. Navy. And what I taught about was the 3 branches of government, the checks and balances and balance of power, to our kids in southern Iowa in the high school where I taught. Those are all gone now. And the worst thing is the Senate and the House of Representatives have been rendered useless. And you folks have let it happen. You sat back and done nothing. The House is the best example. We're still seeing on the Senate, it looks like there's a little gumption to fight back against the new dictator. But this has been like a Nazi blitzkrieg, and you folks have sat and done nothing. Now, I know that we're going to go against Pete Hegseth, who is incompetent. But you're not scared. So my question is this. Are you afraid of Trump? Are you corrupt like Trump? Or are you just at the point you don't care anymore and that's why you don't do anything?
Thank you for your service. I do appreciate that. Obviously, I don't agree because I don't think our country is being destroyed. On the other hand, I see that our country is being with the federal government, and because I've worked on these squeal issues for so long, I'm not squealing, ma'am. It's the Doge efforts we're going through. Why was our federal government, sir? Because you taught civics, federal government. Why was the federal government established 2.5 centuries ago? It was established for the common defense of the people, so our military, defending our country, number one. It was for a common judiciary to settle disagreements. And it was for those things that the people could not do for themselves. That's why the federal government was established. Did it mean planting wildflowers along the interstate? No. All of these other programs that the federal government has been expanded to was not the role of the federal government. The things that were not spelled out, the things that were not spelled out into the Constitution were delegated under the 10th Amendment to the states. So what we are seeing in federal government is the right sizing of the federal government and allowing the states to take up the role that our forefathers intended.
It's chaos.
It may be chaos to you, but we do have to get back to a semblance of what our country was founded for. So we are $36 trillion in debt. Both sides have contributed to this. But when does it end? When does it end? So we do have to, I am, and that's why Doge is so important. So we have seen billions of dollars funneled to China through a lot of our small business programs. Again, I focus on small business. So those dollars are not going to go to China anymore. You want to borrow money from China to send money to China?
Sure.
That makes no... Sure?
I don't give a fuck about China.
Sure.
I care about my country that's being taken over by
Okay, does everybody agree that we should borrow money from China to send it to China? Wow. Okay, you guys, wow.
Wow, I can't believe you're acting like this. You're acting like you're living in a whole different universe.
Oh my goodness.
This
Okay.
is not
Well,
reality.
anyway, okay. This is not a productive conversation. So anyway, back to the federal government, the way it was founded. This is what we are attempting to do, and I think in the end we'll be stronger. Now, I do believe that having a president that I can actually have a conversation with on the phone and having a seat at the table, I couldn't do that with President Biden, folks. I couldn't do that with President Biden. Where was he? No, he was not. He was not present. He was not mentally capable of controlling. I saw all the time. People closest to him will acknowledge now. But when we, so you value coming out. You value coming out and visiting with me and being able to express your displeasure, right? Yes, it is my job, and that's why I'm here. So I do work for you, and I work for every other Iowan in the state. So again, you value the opportunity to come out and visit. I value that opportunity as well to visit with our President Donald Trump. He does take my calls. He does listen to my concerns. I take all of this information and I'm able to provide it to the president. I could not do that with President Biden. He did not take my calls. He did not take anybody's calls. So anyway, that's the way government should work, is having this type of interaction and interaction between the branches of government. I'm able to do that in this administration. Was not able to do that in the past administration.
Next up is John Kaiser.
First of all, I want to thank you for holding this town meeting. I've heard that Republican legislators were not to hold town meetings. I don't know exactly where that came from, but anyway, I'm very thankful that you're here. I have one question. Do you think the legislative branch is doing anything to restore balance of power, which in my opinion is heavily in the executive branch? The judicial branch can bring affidavits and things to play, but the legal process takes so long that it's hard to see any limit of power it's hard to see any limit on the executive branch. So I'm interested to know if you see any evidence in the legislature, either House of Representatives or Senate, that will kind of restore the balance of power which our administration needs.
Well, it's so good, and thank you. And to your first point, what I would like to point out to folks is that here in Iowa, you are blessed to have elected officials that will come out and visit with you. Because, no, I'm serious. I talk to so many people from other states that have never, ever had the opportunity to meet the people they elect, not even their state legislators. In Iowa, we're very active in getting out into the counties. So I appreciate that acknowledgement. And I would say that with the balance of power, we actually are very active in the legislature and making sure in Congress. Again, I'm the chair of the Small Business Committee, and I hold weekly meetings, and we're moving bipartisan legislation. And I want to acknowledge that as well, is that we do work on a lot of bipartisan issues. And so we are working and functioning quite well as a Congress this year. We have worked more in this session, in this year, than we did most of last year, already just in the first few months. We're moving bills out of the Small Business Committee. We're moving bills out of the Commerce Committee, you name it. So we are actively working and doing more in this Congress than we probably saw in the past 2 years of the previous Congress. So, no, just go back and look. You can go to my website. So, we are working very hard as our job in Congress to move legislation. We are working on appropriations bills, and the Senate Majority Leader John Thune would like to be able to move all of those appropriations bills out. Now, think back, last year we got into trouble, as we do every year, not getting appropriations bills done on time. So when we were sitting in the minority, of course, we had Chuck Schumer as the majority leader. We had all of our appropriations bills out, done by the summer. Every last one of them, all 12 individual bills. He chose not to move them. He chose not to move them. Spending bills that affect every program out there, and he chose not to do them. So we are taking control. We are moving. We are functioning as Congress. That is our role, to control the purse. We control the pocketbook and the purse. We are moving appropriations bills. That's our function. So yes, we are the balance of power.
Next up is Cheryl Easton and Chris Longgreen. Cheryl Easton.
Okay, Cheryl.
Senator Ernst, I have some questions about the reconciliation bill. I was glad that the gentleman up here pointed out the part about reducing the accountability that the administration would have to court orders. What I would want to talk about now are two things. One has to do with actually the budget itself, which the reconciliation bill primarily ought to be, or actually solely ought to be addressing. And then also one about a part of the bill that addresses private school vouchers as tax credits within the bill. So I'm going to read to you from an email that I sent to you recently. You acknowledged its receipt, but you haven't had time to get back to me specifically about it, which I understand. As you know, as we all know, the Republican Party has long emphasized its support of fiscal responsibility. The Congressional Budget Office projects that the budget bill passed by the House will add $2.3 trillion to the federal government's deficit over the next 10 years. Treasury.gov reports the federal government has already spent in the fiscal year 2025, which is not just President Trump, it would be President Biden's presidency too, $1.05 trillion more than it has collected. As I understand it, the House-approved budget bill will offer tax savings to the upper 0.1% of earners in the U.S. of, I've got wrong numbers, so I'll go on to the next statement. The top 5% of earners as a group will see a tax cut of $117.2 billion, more than 20% of the tax cuts in the bill. In contrast, the Congressional Budget Office has said that the lowest 10% of earners in the U.S. will lose money after the bill. The disproportionate financial benefits to the wealthiest individuals and corporations, to me, seem neither compassionate or fiscally responsible. also said to cut about 30% of the funding for SNAP and to leave at least 9 million people who currently receive Medicaid without health care coverage. The Congressional Budget Office also reports that the pay-as-you-go law, that the increase in the federal deficit created by the House-approved budget bill will trigger about $490 billion in cuts to Medicare from 2027 through 2034. And my second concern is the deal about the private school vouchers. The proposal would use the federal tax code to offer vouchers that students could use to attend private, secular, or religious schools, even in states where the voters have opposed such efforts. The federal proposal would reward people who make charitable donations to what are known as scholarship granting organizations. They reward a dollar-for-dollar tax credit, but it doesn't stop there. Instead of cash, the donors could donate stock. Normally, when you sell stock that's made money, you pay capital gains taxes on any profit you've made. But donors who give their stock to an SGO, this scholarship, would have to pay wouldn't have to pay capital tax gains on any increase in the stock's value, and they would still get the tax credit. Between the tax credit and this capital gains tax avoidance, they would find that donating would yield a personal profit for themselves, and donating to the scholarship fund, which actually just gives them a tax credit. It's estimated that the bill as currently written would facilitate $2.2 billion in capital gains tax avoidance over the next decade. In other words, is a tax shelter for the wealthy.
So thank you for writing that in as well, and thanks for coming out today. And yes, and you stated again that as written, and it will change. The bill will be changing. There are going to be some things that we do agree on with the House, though, and you mentioned things like the Medicaid and how some people currently on Medicaid would not be able to receive Medicaid. That's because they're not currently eligible by the original definition of Medicaid, and they will be moved off of those Medicaid rolls. Again, still allowing those that are truly eligible for Medicaid to remain on those rolls. When it comes to SNAP, and believe me, I've focused on this issue, the states have been making overpayments when it comes to SNAP, and this is an issue that has been recognized by both Democrats and Republicans. So this is an area that I worked with Debbie Stabenow, who was the Democratic chair of the Ag Committee, to correct. We did not get the Farm Bill done during her tenure as chair, and so this is something that we do hope to correct in the reconciliation bill. So that's SNAP as it stands now. That again has been agreed upon by both Democrats and Republicans in the past. So when we're talking about the corrections in this reconciliation bill, again, it's corrections of overpayments and people that have not been eligible for these programs by law as it is currently written. So when you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible. So they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die. So for heaven's sakes, folks. Okay, no, but what you don't want to do is listen to me when I say that we are going to focus on those that are most vulnerable. Those that meet the eligibility requirements for Medicaid, we will protect. We will protect them. Okay? Medicaid is extremely important here in the state of Iowa. If you don't want to listen, that's fine. But what I'm doing is going through and telling you that those that are not eligible, those that are working and have opportunity for benefits elsewhere, then they should receive those benefits elsewhere and leave those dollars for those that are eligible for Medicaid. SNAP overpayments that the states have been making will need to stop. Okay? No, it's not a lie because I've worked on it. It's bipartisan. Then you tell everybody else in the Senate that what we're doing is wrong. Democrats, Republicans, and independents. So ma'am, you did have a very lengthy point there. But again, going back, what we'll try and do in the Senate version of the bill is correct and make sure that the law is being followed. Those tax credits and things that were passed in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, what we're planning to do is extend those. So that's what we're planning to do. And then when it comes to the school vouchers, again, that is something that could be construed as being more policy-oriented than actually focused on that mandatory spending. So we will have to go back and see. I appreciate school vouchers, and I would be supportive of that. I believe that parents should have the opportunity to decide the best course of education for their own children. So we want to make sure. I'm publicly educated. My daughter was publicly educated. I had great, but again, not every private school is church affiliated. So anyway, but I do think parents have that opportunity to make that decision. They should. And we want to make sure that our children are well educated. So yes, I do support that. And if you want to go to my website, you can see where I've co-sponsored different private education initiatives. But again, I don't know that it'll make it through the bird bath in the Senate. We'll have to see what the parliamentarians rule when it comes to all of these other types of provisions that were in the House bill.
Next up is Chris Lorraine.
I don't know if you hear me from here. So I appreciate you being here. Also, Senator Ernst. As you know, Parkersburg experienced some pretty serious events in the last 15 years. Very, very challenging stuff. I appreciate the visit you took to Greenfield recently. Can you explain maybe some of the processes of trying to streamline funding as it comes to cities or counties with natural disasters? I know firsthand the difficulty of trying to get through the red tape and trying to get what we need. I know when the tornado happened here, one of the things we said to FEMA is give us $5, we'll make it look like $500, and we'll try to give you back the $5. And we really took that serious. But I know Greenfield has struggled with some similar things. Secondarily, first responders, whether it's police, fire, and EMS, were severely impacted by natural disasters in Greenfield here in Parkersburg. And then the murder of Coach Thomas in 2009 too severely impacted us. But there seems to be like a lack of maybe a knowledge or an understanding of the impact that volunteer firefighters, volunteer EMS, and how to deal with those things. So it's kind of a two-part question. I didn't know if the federal government had any role in being able to help volunteers, and I don't want to, forgive me for not talking about the EMS and fire. How do we rectify that? Is there any funding available to try to help first responders out?
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And as we go through severe weather incidents, and I was in Greenfield earlier this week and was able to see the recovery that they are going through. Similar situation to what Parkersburg went through a number of years ago. And so, yes, there is a role that the federal government plays, and that is through FEMA and the work that we do with local emergency managers as well as our state emergency management system. So again, it goes back to the safety and protection of the people. Okay, safety and protection of the people. So FEMA needs to be streamlined. we know that, we get that, we understand that. And so I've sat down with some Iowa emergency managers. They have ideas on how we could do better from the federal government side and enable local responders to do better. And you're right, every situation that we have here in Iowa, I don't know if we're unique or not, but I think it's just the resolve of our people. When an incident occurs, folks are in immediately to support their neighbors. So you're right, you can take that buck and turn it into so much more at the local level, but we need a quick response from the federal government in that support. So finding ways to streamline, again, I'll probably get booed for talking about government efficiency. So, but part of DOGE, okay, did it at that time. So Department of Government Efficiency. So it's not about, the E is not about elimination, it is about efficiency. So how can we do better as a federal government to respond to the people on the ground? So making it easier in that application process for local governments to go through the state agency, get those dollars that flow down much quicker to the local entities so that they support our first responders. Okay, that's really important to do that. So FEMA is one. I do want to touch a little bit. You brought up Ed Thomas, and again, supports. And there's probably not a federal level response for those actions that happen in a community, and that was devastating. And we had a prayer breakfast in Red Oak that Ed Thomas's brother came to. But so mental health resiliency is really important to me. And so I am a co-founder of the Senate Mental Health Caucus. It's a bipartisan caucus. And we look at ways from the federal government that we can support state and local entities in developing greater mental health resilience. I know it's something that our law enforcement officials deal with probably on a daily basis as well. And that was a big topic of conversation earlier this week when I met with chiefs of police and sheriff's departments. So efficiency on making sure the dollars are flowing down quickly to local government so you can do your recovery, and then flowing down as well quickly when we deal with issues of mental health resiliency. But thank you very much for being a big part of the community.
Good, this is Sir, and next constituent we have is Christine Furr. Fisher.
First of all, again, thank you for coming, because I'm sure you knew it wasn't going to be pleasant.
No, it
actually,
is actually.
Actually, the big question I wanted to ask, the lady over here asked very well with great detail. So I guess I would like to make a comment and give a suggestion. I am retired, recently retired. I have spent my adult life working for the government in one form or the other, in human services, but also in offices where we had the income maintenance workers. You want to know how to save money in the government. You go ask the people who have been doing those jobs. Instead of somebody who makes billions getting money from the government, I believe there needs to be coming together of the people who have run these departments over the last 3 to 4 administrations, and people who have been working in the state level within those same departments. I believe you put the people who have been doing that job, they are going to come back and tell you this is exactly where the money's not being well used. This is where money needs to be put. And we wanted to do that. I can tell you, 30-some years working in government, we wanted to do that because there were so many times we would be seeing money going into things that was somebody's big priority, but it really wasn't what we needed right down here in our county. So that is my recommendation. take the advice of the people who work in these departments.
Absolutely.
Put together these committees, let them tell you how their department can be more effective.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Okay, my last comment is, I'm a veteran. I have 2 brothers who are retired veterans. I have a niece and a nephew who are retired veterans. I have 2 other nephews who are veterans. My father was a veteran. How can you, with your own military background, not fight any cuts to anything for our veterans?
Thank you. And thank you for your service. And yes, I think listening to the people that work in these programs is very, very important. Actually, I have an aunt. She is retired now. She retired recently, but she did do low-income work for the county. So believe me, yeah, and believe me, no, we hear it. So I actually authored a bill a number of years ago. It was called the Empowerment Act. And I had some folks that were Republicans that were co-sponsors on this. And it allowed the federal government to send dollars to the states and allow greater flexibility within the programs that work for those that were economically challenged. Because we know that those that may not make a living wage, they are trapped in a situation where they're receiving benefits from the state and the federal government, but if they make too much money, they hit a fiscal cliff, and then they lose their child care benefits, they lose maybe their heating benefits. So there's all kinds of things that can happen if you make too much money. So what I authored was a way for the states to tailor their own programs to help people up out of poverty so that they're not being penalized for getting a wage increase, for doing better for themselves. I think it's important that we lift people up out of poverty and not penalize them for doing better, right? I mean, is it the goal to keep people comfortably in poverty or help them out of poverty? So, and I did, and you know what? So with this Empowerment Act, how many Democratic co-sponsors do you think I had? None. None. Yeah, and you don't care, but that's the problem, is that if you author a bill that makes sense, you want to help people keep the benefits as they're working their way out of poverty, that should be a good thing. And I did listen, and ma'am, and I did listen. This was from a young lady in southern Iowa that she was a young single mom. She had to get her GED. She got a CNA. She went to work for the nursing home. She was a hard worker, and they kept offering to raise her wages. She got to a point where she was being offered a supervisory position at the nursing home. But she sat down and she penciled it out, and this is when I was a state senator, so, you know, it's $200 back then went a lot further than it does now. But she penciled it out, and she was going to make $200 more a month, and she was going to lose her benefits. So she decided that she would go ahead and take the wage increase, even though it was going to cause her family hardship. Because she told me, she said, I knew if I didn't take that promotion, I was never, ever going to do better for my child. That's what we have trapped people in, is making that really tough decision of losing out on federal programs and state programs in order to do better. That's a bad choice. So my way of doing things is to help people ease up to do better for themselves and their children. We gotta do it. So I think you all should get on board with this program, help me out with it. You know, folks in other states, have them support my program. It's common sense, and it is listening to the people that are challenged, because we've all come from families that have been through those challenges as well. So thanks for your work in that area.
Our last question.
And veterans. We're not cutting veterans benefits. No, we're not cutting veterans benefits.
And last question is from Elizabeth Kenrich. Kenrich.
Oh, same. You back here.
Thank you so much, Senator, for coming. I've actually come to DC a couple of times to meet with you and advocate, so I really appreciate you coming here to my hometown. Like many people have brought up about Medicaid, that's also what I wanted to discuss today. So professionally, I work for Lutheran Services in Iowa. I coordinate our statewide maternal support, prenatal support program. I'm very concerned about the Medicaid possibility of cuts. Locally, or locally, recently Medicaid was reduced from being 375% of the poverty level during pregnancy to 200%. I realize that that's a state level issue, but I am very concerned that we're going to see concerns in about 9 months with higher mortality rates and more problems with babies. Personally, I've also birthed 4 children in the state, and this is my youngest, he's 1. I have been on Medicaid all 4 pregnancies. Although I have a full-time job, I have a husband who also works. We qualify for Medicaid while I'm pregnant because of those higher income levels, and we need it to cover my high deductible, although I have health insurance through work. I heard you say earlier about people who work full-time but still get Medicaid. Yeah, I meet with dozens of women who have dual enrollment where they have private insurance as well as Medicaid, and it helps cover the things that their private insurance doesn't, or that high deductible. So I just wanted to offer that perspective.
That's good. That's good information. Thank you.
And just share that Medicaid is extremely important to the smallest and most vulnerable population in Iowa.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really, and that is really helpful information. So thank you. And if we can capture your name and info, if we can use you as a reference, that would be helpful. No, that's good. And again, because you are part of that vulnerable population, we want to make sure that you have access to Medicaid. So you will hear examples of those, like the able-bodied 30-year-old man who is taking advantage of the program, not working. What we're asking is that please engage in work activities, engage in volunteer activities, be enrolled in a training program, and then that makes you Medicaid eligible. So if you go back and read what the House had in there, there were provisions. You meet all of those provisions. So thank you. But I would love to capture your specific information, Elizabeth. Thank you. All right, and thank you everybody for coming out today. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Thank you.
They didn't choose mine either. Shocking. I'm a veterinarian, and I want to get mine.